We have a couple clips to look at of channel favorite Jasmine Crockett sounding off on Trump over his agenda during a recent MSNBC interview, while also spelling out what to expect in the House and Senate with the majorities and legislatively, giving the expected Republican majority in both, where I think a lot of good insights can be drawn about what Democrats will be up to the next few years from what she has to say as they bide time until the next election. So I've lined these up and we'll be back with the needed context.
This last House majority was so wildly dysfunctional with a very thin margin. Are you expecting anything different this time around?
No. It is the one thing that I've been telling people, listen, the one thing we can count on is that, number one, they can't count. And number two, the fact that they don't get along with one another. So those are the things that we are holding close to the chest. You know, I'm really excited about Derek Tran. And we are watching another race in California right now. And he is pulled ahead as well, Adam Gray. So we're hoping that we actually end up having more members of the House this 119th than we actually had in this 118th. So we're currently on track to have 214, which is the exact same number that we had throughout the 118th. And if we can pick up this last seat with Mr. Gray, then we'll be looking at having 215. And we know that Donald Trump has plucked out a number of members already.
Yep. We know that Trump obviously took the presidency and then the Senate as well. But the question following the election was, well, how is the House going to shake up? You know, as the last votes come in, where's the House going to end up? You know, at first, will Republicans have a majority? And then when it was pretty clear that they would, it's by what margin? And now it seems that that margin could be as small as 217 to 215, depending on this last race, with Trump having rather non-strategically plucked away multiple members of the House for his cabinet, taking from his own majority, further cutting into it and hindering his ability to pass meaningful legislation, as with a 217 to 215 majority, only one Republican vote is needed to go against Trump for any bill that he wants to pass to be shot down and killed. And with numerous still common sense Republicans, this at least adds the hope for some sorts of checks and balances in the legislative for some of the more wild proposals that Trump and MAGA might try and get through, but no fingers crossed, obviously, without the retribution of a Democratic Senate, a Democratic president, who knows where Republicans will fall in terms of just going along party lines.
Yes, the Republicans are going to control the House of Representatives, but if all the current results hold up, we're looking at a record small majority after the Novembers in the last 90 years. You have to go all the way back since the Herbert Hoover administration to find an even smaller majority after the November elections. We're talking about the Republicans with 220 seats, Democrats with 215 if the current House results hold. And keep in mind that this will drop lower if Stefanik Waltz or others like Matt Gaetz leave the Congress.
Yeah, talk to me. This is sort of the best case scenario for Republicans, at least for the next few weeks or months. Where could it go?
Where could it go? It could shrink even further. So let's say Gaetz, Stefanik, and Waltz resigns. We could be looking at, get this, Republicans at 217, the Democrats at 215, and I went all the way back. Look, this is crazy. This is crazy, right? Because all it means is Democrats at 215 plus one GOP seat could tank the entire thing.
And Gaetz has resigned. Mike Waltz is leaving. He's tapped Oregon Republican Lori Chavez DeRemer for Secretary of Labor. Ellie Stefanik as well has been tapped for a cabinet position. So until special elections or whatever is held for at least the first few months of Trump's administration, MAGA could have a hell of a time getting anything passed, especially in the more extreme of their agenda. I mean, in Trump's first term, we even saw this, where while controlling the House and Senate, he was unable to get anything passed, even failing to get the votes for immigration reform, which was his landmark thing and Republicans' landmark thing, as the GOP is largely chaotic and unable to efficiently legislate, even among themselves. This is one of the pluses we have on the left, where even when Republicans are in control, they're kind of really bad at what they do. Which is what we want, by the way. We want it to be this way, because if they learn how to actually unify and legislate, they could do some real damage to the country which again is what we're definitely hoping to avoid.
The fact that we have Americans that are waking up and saying, wait a minute, are you saying that tariffs are going to negatively impact me? Are you saying that we're going to have to pay for this? It's kind of like that wall that we're still waiting on Mexico to build, right? That they're going to pay for it. No, we're going to pay for it. We're going to be the ones that are suffering. And for those that thought that inflation was bad, even though it has come down, even though that it is honestly, cooled off here a lot quicker than it cooled off in the rest of the world, let me just tell you, it's time to buckle up, Buttercup, because it is about to be on and popping if for some reason he gets half of this done. And right now, looking at the henchmen that he is trying to put into his administration, we are on track to see a lot of these negative things impact our economy.
And it's funny how MAGA is walking around saying Trump got a mandate to do all this stuff. He had a mandate for tariffs. And one of the most searched terms following the election is tariffs. One of the most searched phrases is, how will tariffs affect me? Or will tariffs affect me negatively? Because most people have no idea what these things are and are now trying to find out if it will hurt them after they went and voted, because it shows most people vote off vibes. They aren't giving a mandate to all these long list of things, of which 90% they probably don't even know. I mean, they're not keeping up with all these, like most people don't keep up with campaign things. They, again, just is the economy good or bad? Do I feel happy or sad with the prices I'm paying? If I'm happy, vote for that party. Sad, vote for the other party. The massive tariffs he's doing now, again, people don't understand, like, hey, these are going to get passed down onto me. So now they're looking up, like, hurry and rushing, like, how are tariffs going to affect me? And you see that, like, it's kind of like when people voted off vibes and the fact that Trump promised Mexico would pay for a wall, and then the wall never got built, and the 56 miles that was built, taxpayers had to pay for it. So it was a complete lie, right? And now it's the same thing, but with tariffs. The effect economically of Trump's term will definitely be felt, despite what the vibes people had when they voted might have been. And he's being served that with some of the cronies he's installing into power, right? These massive tariffs are the start of it, sure, which might launch us into a trade war, like with the first time that he did it, right? Like where these kind of the cost gets passed on to the consumers, the industries get weakened. We remember how he had to bail out the farmers in his first term. We remember the manufacturing recession in 2019 because of his tariffs in the first term. Or then we could talk about things like the massive effects that things like mass deportation will have. He has Tom Homan, Project 2025 author, as his borders are. And Trump hasn't rolled out a single plan on how he aims to not let this happen in terms of like the industries in which undocumented labor is like relied on for prices, where how do you keep prices from going up? How do you fill these jobs? How do you do this? And it undoubtedly will happen if we do mass deportation. So I wonder if he's lying about the deportation or if he just doesn't care about the effects or hopes that, he can just kick that can down the road to the next president. And he's also appointing a Treasury Secretary who will go along with whatever he says and allow him to, as Republicans are now trying to pass legislation in the House, and they're mad that Democrats aren't signing on with it, to allow Trump to do this with his Treasury Secretary to go after political opposition and their funding of their organizations through arbitrarily deeming them unfit, as the Treasury Secretary would have unilaterally ability to deem this, right? And there would be no due process, nothing through the courts. He's having Alon and Vivek try to pull away at consumer protections. They'll probably try to pull away at labor protections, all of these things. But like in the CFPB is an agency that saves over $20 billion a year for consumers for less than $1 billion a year in operating costs. But they will tell you that this is the deep state and the establishment. What we are seeing right now is a true implementation of the establishment by the elites, doing it in our face. But because the right thinks Trump is like funny and owns the libs, they refuse to see it, right? Because, he's convinced all of them that it's only the establishment if Democrats are in it. So they aren't even batting an eye at like him hiring rich people to control regulations that can affect consumers, or him, hiring war hawks for his ambassador positions. And it's just like, what are we doing here?